In recent years, there has been a widespread movement or expectation that it's up to the consumer to make more informed choices when sourcing their food. This movement stems from an increasing awareness of the impact that agricultural practices have on health and safety of humans, animals, and the natural environment. Under what is called the Canadian Organic Regime, consumers are to be protected against misleading or deceptive labeling practices, to clarify and disseminate accurately the definition of organic, and to improve access of Canadian organic products in the foreign and domestic markets. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency is responsible for the monitoring and enforcement of the organic products regulations, which applies to products to be sold interprovincially and internationally. Certification bodies accredit organic production systems should they meet the particular standards set in the regulations. Some provinces, like BC, have legislation that makes federal requirements mandatory, even for products sold in the same province. To be certified organic, the standards lay out details of organic production, which includes how livestock and crops must be grown, processed, and distributed, as well as restrictions and methods for treating disease and eliminating pests. In general, products that are at least 95% organic content, as accredited by a certification body, must have organic on the packaging with a Canadian certified logo as well. Certified Organic Associations of BC have their own logo for organically produced products sold within the province. Like federal regulations, BC Certified Organic Foods must have at least 95% certified organic ingredients to rep the logo. According to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, local food is defined as food that's produced in the same province in which it's sold, or food sold across provincial borders within 50 kilometers of the originating province or territory. Including local in the labeling of a product is voluntary. The use of this claim is still subject to prohibitions relating to false and misleading claims of the Food and Drug Act and the Consumer Packaging and Labeling Act. Conventional food production has fewer restrictions than organic food production. For example, synthetic pesticides can be used, as well as antibiotics. Conventional food production is not always considered ethical. Consumers often feel that mass production using conventional methods, while helping to combat issues of accessibility of food with an expanding population, is not environmentally sustainable. Local and organic foods may come with similar health and safety risks for humans through ingestion and the surrounding environment exposure. Let's begin with the concept of food miles and the effect of food production on the world's climate, an issue that may weigh heavily in the decision-making of consumers. There's various benefits to buying local. You're helping to lessen the 11% overall carbon food footprint that food miles contribute to, or the travel from farm to plate. Upstream, food goods are produced using energy-intensive processes. The retail outlets, restaurants, and other distributors exert less energy downstream. The process of creating synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, for example, for use on conventional farms is totally energy intensive. So, purchasing food that's certified organic means you as a consumer are helping to lessen the 83% overall carbon food footprint further upstream. So ideally, purchasing organic and local is a great way for a consumer downstream to partake in reducing the environmental impact of agricultural practices. But interestingly enough, studies on consumer food choices indicate that concern for the environment is often of less importance compared to food safety and health outcomes. Studies comparing food yield of conventional versus organic farms often produce inconsistencies. Depending on the type of food crop, yields can be high for organic farms, but overall, conventional farms have a greater yield. Our growing population puts stress on farms to produce more. It's debated that while biodiversity in organic farms improves, the yield of organic farms is not enough for the demand. Pathogens causing foodborne illness are a threat to all foods. A systematic review of 237 studies regarding foodborne pathogens in organic versus conventional foods found there is no difference in risk for contamination of produce or animal products with pathogenic bacteria, which includes things like Salmonella. They did find, however, that organic farms use manure as fertilizer had a higher risk of E. coli on produce than those not using animal wastes. The study found that, quote, despite widespread perception that organically produced foods are more nutritious than conventional alternatives, we did not find robust evidence to support this perception. They did find higher phosphorus in produce, but the clinical significance in developed countries is low. The only time a person suffers from dietary phosphorus deficiency is when they're near total starvation. Mixed results have been found for other content of organic foods. Another study found that in fact local foods might have the highest nutritional content, not due to specific practices per se, but rather the shorter timing of when the food was picked in its peak ripeness to the time it took to be consumed by the buyer. This same study looked at pesticide contamination for conventional and organic foods, but again, the clinical significance is unclear. Conventional foods had 30% higher risk for pesticide contamination than organic produce. Conventional farms can use synthetic or natural pesticides. Organic farms can only use natural pesticides, but often as a last resort to kill incessant pests. The effect on the environment of natural pesticides can be just the same or worse than synthetic pesticides. Organic foods may also contain residues of synthetic pesticides due to handling and transport with other products from neighboring conventional farms. It's unreasonable to expect that organic farmers can prevent all forms of chemical exposure to their crops. In summary, the principal concern of organic food production for consumers seems to be human health effects, with the primary route of exposure being ingestion. Effects of organic production on the environment, while of great importance, may come as secondary concern. Sources of contamination include air, water, soil, food handlers, packaging, animals, food contact surfaces, and more. Differential exposure to a combination of biological, chemical, and physical stressors may contribute to an increase in vulnerability of the environment in humans. Based on epidemiological and toxicological evidence reported, many human health harms are still present with organic farming practices versus conventional, as well as environmental stresses. But as previously discussed, risks for E. coli exposure may be greater while risks for pesticide exposure may be lesser. Understanding simultaneous and sequential exposure to the various compounds in food should be explored further, as well as effects of cumulative exposures and understanding how risk changes from source to digestion. To conclude, University of Guelph study promoted the idea of sustainable farming. Instead of pitting organic and conventional practices head to head, choices must be made for lowest environmental impact, whether this is using natural and synthetic products. What do you think?